Is America, is the American church exempt from extreme persecution? Trump is in the middle of peace deals with Egypt and surrounding countries. Weapons deals are going on in the background. And I'm going to give a little bit of my thoughts on that ongoing thing since I made statements in the past. Are more extremist groups going to emerge in America? And will Christians wake up to what's happening, or will they condemn Israel for defending itself? We're going to get into that this afternoon, along with remembering October 7th, 2023, which was the attack on Israel by the Muslim Brotherhood. Join me as we go into this next. All right. So, if y'all remember, 2 years ago when Israel was attacked by the Muslim Brotherhood, essentially Hamas, we have that peace deal that's trying to be worked out right now in the middle of Egypt and surrounding countries to bring lasting peace to the Middle East and stop this conflict that's been going on for decades, centuries, maybe even. Um, I wanted to pull up what Trump was saying this week on that, and this actually came out a couple of days ago, but he's continuing to talk about it and hopefully going to close this deal in the Middle East to stop the murdering going on over there. If you take one side or the other, we'll get into that a little bit later. But here I wanted to pull up Trump and what he's talking about as far as how far along the peace deals are. And here we go.
All right, welcome back in Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. A live look at Gaza, early morning hours there, Israel Standard Time, 1:30 in the morning. We do continue to follow tabs on the ongoing discussions taking place in Cairo. We understand that there are mediators, there's U.S. officials, and we're starting to hear the first little bits of context coming out of those meetings. President Trump posting on Truth Social moments ago that there have been very positive discussions with Hamas and countries from all over the world, Arab, Muslim, and everyone else, he says, this weekend, to release the hostages, end the war in Gaza, but more importantly, finally have long-sought peace in the Middle East. These talks have been very successful and proceeding rapidly, he says. The technical teams will again meet Monday in Egypt to work through and clarify the final details. I am told that the first phase should be completed this week, and I am asking everyone to move fast. I will continue to monitor this centuries-old conflict. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow. Something that nobody wants to see, President Trump says. We just got that in from the Rapid Response 47 account. A live look at the White House. The time right now on the East Coast, just past 6:30. And we have seen some blasts in real time as we've been following this live camera. It's planted in southern Israel overlooking the Gaza skyline. So that's the latest we're hearing from President Trump. We'll, of course, be following in the coming hours to see if the Israeli government says anything. And, of course, we'll be listening to see if Hamas agrees to a path forward toward peace.
All right. So my thoughts on this, I've said in the past that I believe a peace deal will happen and that this time period will be allotted to help the breaking ground for the third temple in Israel. But this is ramping up, and I say that for certain reasons here we'll get into tonight. But it's interesting that he thinks that he can bring peace to the Middle East for a conflict that's been going on for so long, like he said there. And we know through scripture that when they start saying peace, peace, then sudden destruction comes. So it makes me wonder often if we are actually going to be able to reach a point where we can have enough time to build the temple, or if that's going to end up being during conflict. It's hard to tell things early on, before all of this stuff was culminating back from 2 years ago up until now, with Israel defending itself against the attack that came against them 2 years ago. But now we're in this place where supposedly Trump is saying that everybody in the surrounding nations want to have the peace. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the deal. And here's why. If you're not aware, and he's going to Cairo, we're talking about a president in Cairo named Al Sisi. He was just elected in December of 23 for his third term. And if you don't know who this guy is, he was raised a Muslim. And all the while, he's saying he wants peace for his people in his country. And they literally have a wall built between them and Gaza because they don't want the Arab Islamic Muslims to come in there and destroy, the property across the Egyptian border, because they know that's exactly what these Palestinian Arabs do when they go into places. They destroy everything. And so, but one of the things he's doing in the background, and I don't know if the administration knows this yet. I would imagine they probably do, if their intelligence is picked up and are making sure that things are copacetic over there. But this stuff started coming out in the last couple of days, and weapons deals are going on in the background. So I want to pull up this article here. I got this on X. That stuff is going on in the background. And let's take a look. So the foreign minister of the Islamist government based in Port Sudan acknowledges Egypt's and other countries' support for the war in Sudan. Egypt is accused today not only of supplying the Sudanese army with weapons, this was on October 2nd, but also of providing training and logistics for the use of chemical weapons in areas densely populated with civilians. The result: slow death, waves of displacement, and the spread of epidemics. In August 2025, the Sudanese army signed a $1.5 billion arms deal with Pakistan. But who paid the bill? According to reliable sources, Egypt financed and managed the deal. Is there clear support for genocide? How can a country that claims to be a big sister send its pilots to spray chlorine gas on Sudanese villages? How can its factories produce poison, not medicine? The answer is clear. The Sisi regime, the guy that I just talked to you about, Al Sisi, does not want a free Sudan. The weapons used against our children do not come from nowhere. Behind every missile, there is a bill. Behind every gas, there's a financier. In our case, the official sponsor is the Egyptian regime. Cairo claims to be an honest broker, but the truth is that it is supporting one side in the war with money, weapons, and technology. This is not mediation, this is conspiracy. And every country that supplies the Sudanese army with weapons supplies it with more of our lives. And anyone who remains silent gives the killers political cover. Now, this is really important to recognize, because we got a shift here. Instead of the concentration being on the Israeli government and going after the Jews in Israel, they've always thought Israel was the little Satan and that America was the great Satan, right? And so, what is the protectorate behind all of this? It's the Christian church. That's what's happening here. So now we have this shift from attacking the Israelites, the Jewish people in Gaza, and now they, Israel thinks they've destroyed, and they have a lot, from the surrounding cities, from being able to attack them by destroying their outposts that they have these missiles stored in and stuff. But now we have Egypt selling weaponry to the Sudan. And Sudan, the Sudanese right now, they have several different um, organizations and armies that are slaughtering Christians over in the Middle East right now. We have them selling weaponry to Russia, and we have Chinese selling weaponry to Egypt. So we got this circle happening right now where the shift has happened to slaughtering Christians over there in the Sudan and Nigeria. And I just want to read you a little bit about what's actually going on over there. So there are credible reports from the international human rights and religious freedom organizations that Christians in Sudan are being targeted, abducted, and killed, particularly in the context of the ongoing civil war that began in April 2023. And just like I said, Sisi was reelected for his third term over there in Egypt back in 2023. It was in December, I believe. Since April 2023, a devastating conflict between the Sudanese Army Forces, the SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, has created a chaotic security situation that Islamist extremist groups on both sides have exploited to target Christian communities. Targeted violence reports indicate a sharp rise in attacks on Christian communities. Christians have been abducted and killed by violent extremist groups operating in the chaotic environment. In one specific reported incident from January 2025, that was just a few months ago, people, South Sudanese Christians were reportedly targeted and killed in Wad Madani, described by one organization as an atrocity crime, where victims were targeted for being Black and Christian. Attacks on institutions, more than 100 churches and Christians owned buildings have been damaged, located, or forcibly occupied by fighting factions since the war began. And doesn't that sound familiar? We got that going on here in the United States. We don't have it to the extent that they are over there. We're going to get into another article here in a little bit. The things that they're actually doing over there, the mob mentality, I think is what's going to grow into this here in America if we don't do something about what's going on here in America soon. But we see these shootings at schools and churches over here. They're, kind of separate incidents, but this is supposedly going on over there every other day. Discrimination in aid. Christians face exceptional hardship in the hunger crisis because local communities and authorities in some areas reportedly discriminate against them and won't provide air or support. Longstanding persecution. The current violence builds upon a long history of persecution of religious minorities in Sudan. See, this has been going on for a long time, but it's actually really, really picked up in the last 2 years. Sharia law influence. Although Sudan's transitional government abolished the apostasy law, which made leaving Islam punishable by death in 2020, many other discriminatory laws and societal practices remain. So we got them trying to build cities like in Texas where they want to take over the Islam, right, and bring in Sharia law. And this is what happens. We have an example, people, to look at in other areas where they're saying if you try to escape, they'll kill you. Is that what we want here? I know I don't. Vulnerability of converts. Christians who have converted from a Muslim background are particularly vulnerable to severe backlash from their families and communities, including violence, imprisonment, and forced marriage, often forcing them to practice their faith in secret. Historical campaigns. For decisions, the Sudanese government, particularly under the regime of Omar al-Bashir, ousted in 2019, has been accused of brutal campaigns to oppose a strict interpretation of Islamic law, which included the destruction of churches and the persecution of Christians and followers of traditional beliefs, especially in regions bordering South Sudan, like the Nuba Mountains. International organizations such as Open Doors and the U.S. Commission of International Religious Freedom list Sudan as one of the worst countries for Christian persecution, a situation that has worsened significantly since the outbreak of the civil war in 2023. And from what I looked up, I think Sudan is listed number 5 for countries that persecute Christians. I want to share another one because this one here is also has also significantly picked up since 2024, and based on reports from human rights organizations and news outlets, the killing of Christians in Nigeria has increased substantially since 2009 and continues to rise significantly as recently as 2025. This these numbers are crazy. You got to listen to this. This escalation has been described by watchdog groups and international figures as reaching a genocidal level. Recent increases, 7,000 plus killed in 2025, according to the International Society for Civil Liberties and the Rule of Law Inter-Society. More than 7,000 Christians were killed in the first 220 days of 2025, people alone, averaging about 35 deaths per day. Escalating attacks since 2020, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project reports that political violence targeting Christian community has become more common since 2020. Attacks targeting Christians increased by 21% from 2020 to 2021 and continued to rise into 2022. Thousands killed in 2024, while uh, lower than the figure for the first part of 2025. The Christian aid group Open Doors reported that 3,100 Christians were killed in Nigeria between October 23 and September 24. Christmas 23 massacres in a series of attacks during Christmas week in 23. Hundreds of Christians were murdered in Plateau State. Not sure where that is. Somewhere in Nigeria, obviously. The long-term violence since 2009, the current escalation is part of a longer-term trend of violence that began with the rise of the Islamist extremist group Boko Haram in 2009. Total details, commute. I can't even say that. A total death toll since 2009 suggests that more than 52,000 Nigerian Christians have been killed by militants. Government interaction, watchdog groups frequently cite the Nigerian government's failure to protect vulnerable Christian communities and hold perpetrators accountable as a key factor strengthening militant groups. Militants responsible for the attacks is attributed to several groups, including Boko Haram, the Islamic State in West Africa province. That's the acronym is ISWAP. Interesting. Never heard of them. And armed gangs of predominantly Fulani militants. Targeted regions. The violence once concentrated in the Muslim majority north has spread into the middle belt and even further south. Attacks in these regions often target Christian farming communities. Other victims, while Christians are disproportionately targeted, reports note that tens of thousands of moderate Muslims have also been killed in Islamic attacks since 2009. So all of these Islamic groups in these other nations are not being suppressed like the ones that Israel attacked around their region. It's picked up in other regions now. And you think that, see, this is where I disagree with Donald Trump. So he thinks that he's going to go over there and he's going to make this peace deal happen, right? As if this stuff isn't going to continue happening in the background because it just shifted to other areas. Number one. And number two, you're just in my opinion, you're letting them buy time to regroup, because if you think that they're without weaponry, they have other nations that are clearly supporting them in these efforts. because, like Egypt, they're trying to keep it away from their borders, so they supply the weaponry to other nations that want to wipe out Christianity and make it a caliphate in their nation. That's what they're doing because they strictly want Islamic law. It's pretty sickening. I wanted to bring up this video clip here with Steve Bannon and Jack Posobiec because he talks about the street violence that's happening here in America and some similarities along the lines with what I just read. And I think strategically, this is what we're going to have to do because here in America, we have all of these millions of illegals that are now within our country, and we don't even know who they are. We could literally, we know for sure that we had Tren de Aragua, right, from Venezuela, but the church has been talking about sleeper cells, right? Sleeper cells are going to be coming out. Are we going to see more extremist groups come out? I think they are sitting in the background, just waiting for their moment to attack. We definitely have a lot of Nigerian people that have come through the border. I know that for a fact. So what other nations have allowed their prisons and mentally ill to come into our country? Excuse me, a little scratchy. Let me pull up this video and we'll listen to what Jack and Steve have to say.
Already here in terms of the fentanyl war that's being waged, and we should call it the fentanyl war. It is the latest iteration of the opium war, and of course the Chinese Communist Party is fueling it with their supply of these chemical precursors of fentanyl to the cartels that are coming from, yes, there are some coming from Venezuela, but the bulk are coming from Mexico, and there needs to be a focus there. Plus, you've got so many that are already in the United States. Now, you want to talk about the street crime, you want to talk about the crime that Stephen Miller and Pam Bondi are issuing these warnings against the threats that are there in Memphis and places like Chicago, where he might be sending the National Guard next. Guess what's fueling all of that street violence? The fentanyl that's coming up from Mexico. See, these are all inextricably linked. And then, of course, you have Portland. Portland as a city is now in open insurrection against the federal government. This needs to be underlined. Write it down, Steve, as you would say, with your number 2 pencil. Portland is now in open insurrection against the United States government. The police are arresting journalists and patriots. Nick Sortor attacked again last night. I believe another patriot was also arrested. They will lie. They lied about Katie Davis Court, my colleague over at the Post Millennial. They will lie about everything. And then the federal judges that are appointed from the same area will come in and lie and say they will be ruled against. The federal government can't come in. This is an actual insurrection scenario whereby you have local officials that are completely defying the unmitigated right, the unlimited right of the federal government to enforce immigration laws. The Constitution gives full power to the federal government to be able to do this. There is no law anywhere in the land that can countermand this. There is no ruling that can countermand this. And yet they play these games over and over and over. And unfortunately, and I was talking to Tim Pool about this, and I'll be doing his show again tonight, this is a situation that could very well turn into a standoff very quickly.
What do you mean, Stan? Look, I said for a long time, once you get down to, and of course the criminals got to go, but we need mass deportations. Now, we're going to get the team, Krikorian and the team over CIS that has another detailed study that shows, I think 2.2 million have essentially, illegal alien invaders have self-deported. I think I'm going to get him on tomorrow, though we're going to be doing a lot of October stuff, 7 stuff tomorrow.
2.2 million self-deported. Now that's a lot, but according to, we can never get these figures straight. For one, I've heard 20 million, I've heard 30 million, but that's only, like 10%, right? So we got a long way to go.
And of course, Carney, the Canadian, is going to be to have a bilat For what reason, I don't know, but he's coming. But we're going to have Krikorian says 2.2 million have already self-deported, but he makes the same case I do. You got to get down to it now. You have tens of millions of illegal aliens still here. They got to be mass deportations. Jack, that's what this fight's about. I know Chicago is crime-ridden, but if you see what happened over the weekend in Chicago, and it's led now by the leaders of this anti-ICE. We got to put down the ICE agents shouldn't have to wear masks. They have to wear masks because they're being doxxed and their families are being intimidated. They're being attacked now, like in Chicago, they're surrounded by 10 cars, led by these groups, these radical groups that the NGOs have sponsored here. The whole thing's got to be shut down. And you got a federal judge that's, yeah, the police stand up just like in Portland. So tell me what then is to be done. We can't have hey, Trump, he ain't going to have he's not going to have any standoff. Tell me what's going to happen here, sir. You have a Trump's judge. It was a Trump-appointed judge, and like President Trump said, hey, I think I made a mistake. The Trump-appointed judge is the one that's got because of Gavin Newsom's suit, because President Trump said, hey, I'm looking at there in California, I think I'm sending that National Guard, because he's going to drive a confrontation with Newsom, right? He's tired of that punk. He just thinks Newsom's a punk, and he's going to drive a confrontation with him, because Newsom is a neo-Confederate. I mean, Los Angeles is in also open defiance of the federal government about immigration laws, Jack. I mean, this is going to come down. We control the country. They control these big metropolitan areas with these radical Democrats who, by the way, can't afford to pay for anything. They got to come back to you for money. This is why it ought to all be cut off right now. Just cut it off. Like the guy singing at the Super Bowl. He going to be big talk, and you got to learn this. You got to do this. Hey, just stop the $100 million that goes for Super Bowl security and get those greaseball owners, the worst guys, some of the worst guys in the world, the owners of NFL franchises, don't care about their cities, don't care about themselves. Just we got to start playing Smash Mouth even more. We got to take it up a level, sir.
Well, Stephen, this is something where a lot of people need to start digging in and understand what it means here. That in 1807. A statutory exemption was enacted in this country to the Posse Comitatus Act. So we know Posse Comitatus, but there is an exemption. There is one and only one exemption, and that is called the Insurrection Act of 1807, which has always been the higher law there, that the president has Title 10 authority to deploy and federalize the National Guard of the states to suppress what? To suppress an insurrection or rebellion against the authority of the United States government. And if you think that's a problem, then why don't you go ask George Washington about the Whiskey Rebellion over there in Western Pennsylvania? Because George Washington didn't have a problem with that whatsoever. The authority of the federal government must be sacrosanct, or, Steve, as you say, that is how we get into another neo-Confederate, or get into a new Confederate situation, neo-Confederates at Newsom and others.
See, and I think so one of the things that's ramping up, and if you guys don't know, James Comey's indictment actually moves up to tomorrow. So this is going to provide pressure on the corruption within our government, and they're going to continue to fund these groups to excel even more. I think that's one of the things that's going to happen. So I really hope that Trump does declare the Insurrection Act and deploy the National Guard to these states, because, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is going to pick up. This is going to pick up just like it picked up over in the Middle East. We haven't seen this type of persecution here in the United States, but because of the illegals that are here, we're at risk of a massive infiltration with groups like that. And I want to bring up this article after we finish this video here and show you exactly what they're doing over there in Nigeria is pretty scary with these groups. So it's crazy to me to think about the fact that we've got these little cells going on right now in the background. And I think it's just to strike fear, because they're hoping that if we're afraid, we'll just stop. But we're not. We're either going to win this, and I think Jack goes on to talk about this. We're either going to win this or we're not. And that's the bottom line here. So let's try to finish this up.
is very simple. We have the states, but federal authority on federal matters does supersede that. And so to suppress an insurrection or a rebellion against the authority of the U.S. government, the president has black letter law, Title 10 authority to be able to deploy the National Guard, and no judge can change that.
That's brilliant. I want that written up, Poso. You got to do that over at Post Millennial for Human Events Daily. It's because, hey, people don't remember the Whiskey Rebellion, once again, about paying taxes, right? About paying taxes on your whiskey, paying taxes. They're so ornery in Western Pennsylvania, Jack, Central and West.
And think about it. So strategically, I think this is one of the only ways that we're going to be able to end this thing, because if you listen to what I read, what was going over there in Sudan and Nigeria, their governments actually do nothing to help the Christians from being slaughtered by these militant groups and gangs. So we already see that happening within certain metropolitan areas and states in America, right? So if we don't nip this in the butt now, we're going to end up in a situation like Ukraine or the UK is right now. They're totally infiltrated by Muslim Arabs, and although they haven't seen violent groups come out yet, I think they're on the verge of that happening, because I think more people are willing to just not say anything over there than actually stick up for themselves. And since we're here in America and Americans are traditionally defiant against this type of stuff, we're going to see what they want. I'm thinking, because this is going to pick up, and we're just not going to put up with it. So we're going to see a sort of civil war. That's what this is all culminating to. It's pretty scary.
Western Pennsylvania, a little known part of history because they don't want to talk about it. Not only did Washington came back, I think after he was president, came back, he was going to head the army, and they made Hamilton a major general, put Hamilton in charge of the field force. They were going to go put it down hard, okay, hard, and then upon further review, let's work out a deal, figure out how we pay our taxes.
You had the president of the United States actually riding into battle.
Riding into battle. With Hamilton, the son he never had. Hamilton.
Yeah, we're up at Jack Posobiec, of course, Twitter, Truth Social.
Okay, so now this is the freaky part. So I found this article here by Newsweek, and I want to show you, I want to pull this video up real quick. This actually shows the regions that are under attack by Muslim militant groups, and some that are very extreme right now. And it's actually south of us in South America and in Mexico too. Not as severe as over in the Middle East, but definitely happening and seeping over into these countries on the west side, right? So this is the kind of thing that we need to be looking out for. Let's check this out here. Top 10. Remember, Trump just stopped the war between Pakistan and India, but there's still stuff happening in the background over there. There's Nigeria. Oh, what happened? There we go. Fulani Muslim bandits. Unpatriotic. North Korea, they got listed as number 2. Everyone saw that coming. Afghanistan. Oh, imagine that. After the Biden administration abandoned the air base over there, they're running for their lives over in Afghanistan. Okay, so this article, let's see. This article is, how come it won't let me shrink down here? Stop sharing. Let me see if I can shrink it down again. I don't know what happened. I want to read you this article because it's pretty intense with what they're actually doing with the gangs over there is pretty intense. Some of the stuff they are facing when these gangs come into town, they actually come in on motorcycles and stuff. This article was pretty interesting. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up again here real quick. But one of the things, see this, Trump thinks he's going to go over there and he's going to get this peace deal done. But I think in the background, we got these things going on and it's just intensifying. And once Hamas does not actually surrender and they see, because Netanyahu already said, if they break the deal, and this would be the second time, I believe, if they break the deal, then they're going to go ahead and start attacking again, and things are going to ramp up all over again. So they haven't completely wiped out the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas over in their region, because it's, I believe, I did an episode a long time ago, and I think there's like 44 million Muslim Arabs in the surrounding countries compared to 4 million Israelis, Jewish Israelis. All right, I got the article back up here. Let's take a look at this. Here we go. Voila. Let's go. Okay, Christians are gradually being wiped out in Nigeria as millions face death, displacement, and kidnapping from jihadist groups. Several NGOs have told Newsweek. If nothing is done in the next few years, Christianity will cease to exist in Nigeria, said Emeka, can't even say that last name, the founder of the local International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law Inter-Society. There is the fear for most Christian Nigerians, said Christian human rights lawyer Jabiz Musa, who is using a pseudonym for security reasons. Gradually, Christians are being wiped out and churches have been destroyed, he told Newsweek. The situation in Nigeria made headlines after comedian Bill Maher and Christians are being systematically killed and blasted Americans for not paying attention to it on September 26th. Here's his video there. Maybe I'll pull that up in a second, but I wanted to read through this. The State Department has since told Newsweek that it is deeply concerned about the levels of violence against Christians and members of other groups in Nigeria. They are conflicting statistics about how many Christians have died and how many have died as a result of their faith, making it difficult to say for sure. But international Christian advocacy group Open Doors lists Nigeria as the 7th most dangerous place for Christians on its World Watch list, and says more Christians are killed for their faith in Nigeria than in the rest of the world combined. The Nigerian government has reportedly pushed back against these type of reports over the years, saying in a statement last month that it categorically refutes recent allegations by certain international platforms and online influencers suggesting that terrorists operating in Nigeria are engaged in a systematic genocide against Christians. You want to talk about genocide in Gaza? Look at what's happening over here with the Christians in Nigeria and Sudan, right? This article came out 2 days ago on the 5th. Portraying Nigeria's security challenges as a targeted campaign against a single religious group is a gross misrepresentation of reality, it said, arguing that Christians are some of the many people across all regions falling victim to terrorists operating in the country. Christians attacked every 2 days. Musa, an independent salesperson for Open Doors' Arise Africa campaign, who often represents Christian victims in Nigeria, estimates that Christians are attacked in some way every 2 days in the Middle Belt, a term used to describe an area that lies between the predominantly Muslim north and Christian south. The Middle Belt is the epicenter of violence in Nigeria for multiple reasons. It is home to hundreds of minority ethnic groups. It experiences frequent land and farmer-herder conflicts, and it is one of the few areas bordering the predominantly Muslim north, with a significant concentration of Christians. Musa described 2 different types of common attacks, one where jihadists will come in their hundreds, listen to this, on their motorbikes, with other attackers on the back with their AK-47s, and then descend on a village and burn, kill, and ransack the village. Other times, very few of them will appear on motorcycles, attack individuals in a few villages, and then disappear, Musa said. It is difficult to know exactly how many Christians have been killed in these types of attacks and how many of these deaths were faith-based, but out of at least 4,476 Christians killed for their region across the world last year, 3,100 of them were in Nigeria, Open Doors said in its most recent watch list. Meanwhile, 16.2 million Christians in sub-Saharan Africa, many of which are from Nigeria, have been displaced, according to Open Doors. Since 2009, which marked the start of Boko Haram's insurgency, there's that word again, right? To establish a caliphate. That's what I was telling you earlier. In Nigeria and the broader Sahel, Intersociety estimates that 19,100 churches have been attacked, burned down, destroyed, and violently shut down. Around 13,000 were counted between July 2009 and December 2014, and an additional 6,100 since mid-2015. We just had that one veteran attack the Mormon church, and he didn't just shoot people there, right? He burned it down. So we're starting to see some similarities here in America, right? Of things that are going on pretty extraordinarily over there, right? These were all in the states of Taraba. I don't know if I want to read through all of those. Those are weird words. Newsweek was unable to verify the figures. This violence is being carried out by Islamic jihadist groups, including Fulani militants, Boko Haram, and ISWAP, according to Open Doors and several other NGOs. Christians, of which there are 106.6 million in Nigeria. That's a lot. 46.5% of the population. Almost 50% of the population are Christian over there, right? Are most targeted in northern Muslim majority states, but both Musa and that lady believe jihadist groups are preparing to expand the violence into the southern part of the country. See? These radical jihadist Muslim Palestinian Arabs, they're not going to stop. This is part of what they believe. They want to actually take over every part of the entire globe. Why do you think they're infiltrating all of these countries that they've never even come close to before? Now they're doing it in the UK, and they've convinced the governments of the UK to simp for a two-state solution with the Palestinian state. That's happening with governments that in the past have never been associated with them. They've gone to war over this kind of stuff. Both Musa and the lady accused the Nigerian government and security forces of not doing enough to help Christians. Because of the violence in the Middle Belt, there are soldiers in most flashpoint areas, Musa said. But in most cases, when villages are under attack, call soldiers or police, come late for no explainable reason, or they tell you that they do not have jurisdiction. Oh, does that sound familiar? What did we just have happen over there in uh, Chicago, where the ICE agents come in and they were surrounded by extremists over there, one lady in particular, and then the police were called in and dispatched, and then they were told to stand down and they left the area. See some similarities here, people? We have not seen these people arrested, investigated, or prosecuted. And, you know, in the blue states here in America, if anyone is arrested, and I see it firsthand because I'm here in Portland, right? That if they're arrested, they're just released the next day because these prosecuting attorneys will not prosecute them. Jihadists are being granted amnesty, de-radicalized, and brought back into the larger society, Musa said. I don't know if you can actually de-radicalize them. I mean, they're taught this stuff from the time they're born, basically, in the Muslim Arab circles. Nigeria runs a program called Operation Safe Corridor, which provides pathways for willing and repentant insurgents and for low-risk armed actors to disengage from violence and embrace peace. I mean, you're just opening the door for spies right there, in my opinion. It operates with the support of several international stakeholders, including the European Union and the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. See, just what I said. The Nigerian government has reportedly defended the scheme. In March, Yusuf Ali, coordinator of the government's National Orientation Agency, told local newspapers, the Daily Post, that although he had initial reservations about the program, he has seen that it is not for extremists, but for those who become involved with jihadists after being abducted, coerced, or manipulated. Okay, well, that makes sense. During insurgent occupation. There have been several mass trials of Boko Haram insurgents since 2009, with 125 convicted last July, according to Nigeria's Attorney General's office. Before that, the last mass trials of Boko Haram suspects took place between 2017 and 18, where 163 people were convicted and 887 set free. There's another trend that we're starting to see here, according to Reuters. As of September this year, Nigeria has prosecuted a total of 700 Boko Haram members, according to the government. But most of the violence against Christians in the Middle Belt is carried out by Fulani militants, Musa said. The Fulani are an ethnic group that spans several countries in the West and Central Africa who are traditionally herders who travel seasonally with cattle. And I think Trump had the Sudanese president at the White House and was actually criticizing him for these traditional herders actually killing and taking over farmers over there, which Nigerian courts officially classed as a terrorist group in January. The violence in the Middle Belt has been perpetrated mostly or entirely by the Fulani militants, Musa said. These communities have been killed, displaced, ransacked, and dismissed from their ancestral land. The militants have taken over the land, built their own houses, renamed some of the villages, and built mosques, he said. Are Christians being targeted? Here we go. Everyone Newsweek has spoken to agrees that other regions, including Muslims, are also affected by the terrorism sweeping the country, but they still believe that Christians are being disproportionately targeted for their religion, especially in the Middle Belt. The Nigerian government, however, has vehemently pushed back against these narratives, saying it oversimplifies a complex, multifaceted security environment and plays into the hands of terrorists and criminals who seek to divide Nigerians along religious and ethnic lines. The violent activities of terrorist groups are not confined to any particular religious or ethnic community. Nigeria Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Malagi, Malajai, I don't know, said last month, these criminals target all who reject our murderous ideology, regardless of faith. Muslims, Christians, and even those who do not identify with any religion have suffered at their hands. Oh, so that makes it okay, right? Insane. He went on to stress the Nigerian government's commitment to completely degrading terrorist groups and securing the lives and property of all citizens. But Inner Society's lady, can't even say that last name, called this as a self-indictment, arguing that a country cannot claim to have international religious freedom if Christians and non-jihadist Muslims are killed on religious grounds. So if the government is saying it's not only Christians, Muslims are also being killed, then it has accepted that Muslims and Christians are being killed on the grounds of religion, proportionate proportionality. That's what it says. Apart, he said. Newsweek has contacted the Nigerian government via email for comment. Let's see. Is there any other interesting stuff here? This is a pretty long article. You know what? I want to pull up that Bill Maher clip from September and let's see what he says. I think he had Nancy Mason from our representatives.
Nigeria, I mean, the fact that this issue has not gotten on people's radar.
Right, no one's talking about it.
It's pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. You are in a bubble. Not, and again, I'm not a Christian, but they are systematically killing the Christians in Nigeria. They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are their Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. They are literally attempting to wipe out the Christian population of an entire country. Where are the kids protesting this?
Right?
Because no one will talk about it, so thank you.
Wow. Yeah. So we got this stuff happening over here now too. And I think it's pretty evident, especially within these blue state metropolitan areas. And I think the way we take care of that now, and thank God that we were able to get Trump back in, because I think he is a true outlier and not a politician, and he can take care of these things by bringing back policies that we've had in the American government for centuries, right? Coming up on the 250th year. And we're going to be ramping up over the next couple of years with these indictments. They're saying that within the next 6 months of 2026, that we're going to see several more. And this is really going to ramp up. I think we're going to see other groups come out of the woodwork, and they're going to really try to scare us more. And so if you're going to church right now and your congregation doesn't have security, I think you should either suggest that your pastor get some offer to be security for your church, or find another place, so that you can be protected. Because I think here in America, we could definitely have a step up compared to some of the other countries, because we still have our Second Amendment right where we can bear arms, right, and protect ourselves. Because these guys they're literally singling out churches and schools where they're gun-free zones, and they know that they're not going to be able to protect themselves, so they specifically go after those places, right? That's why we're seeing it here in America. And we really have to pick up on this. We have to, with these ICE buildings, my opinion is, I thank these influencers for going out and down there. But I think in certain instances, it's just conflating the issue. Because, like Nick Sorter got arrested here, but the problem is we have a blue state government where, even if the person that hit Nick got arrested, they would just release him and it would happen all over again. So we're not actually being able to come up with a solution when we're confronting them. It's just agitating them more and giving them fuel to keep doing what they're doing. What we really need is, now that we have the authority through Trump to be able to do these things, and he has his cabinet members in the DHS and the FBI now that will get behind him and actually enforce the law. That's when, when they bring them in, we need to come in, and that's when we support them. But doing this on our own is not actually going to solve anything, and you're just conflating the issue, in my opinion. I mean, I was down there a few days ago, and there wasn't a whole lot of people, but I just stood back and watched. I wasn't going to get anybody's face because I'm not going to put myself in harm's way when I don't really have a way to stop it on my own. I mean, as an influencer, you could go down there and you could show what's happening, sure. But I like the way, specifically, like what Ben Berkwam did, and he just went in, as well as today. I don't know if you guys know, but David Medina was down there, and DHS Secretary Christy Noem, and they filmed from the roof, right? They went up and they were able to go into the ICE facility and film from the roof and show what's happening, instead of actually getting in the faces of the protesters and just agitating the whole scene. So when we're talking about a solution, we got to be strategic about this, guys. You know, we're definitely on offense now, which is a good thing, but we also need to think about the fact that trying to go out there and handle it ourselves isn't always the answer. And we have to rely on the fact that we know that Trump is going to try and take care of this. He's trying to do so much right now. It's not even funny. I can't believe his ability at his age is pretty intense, pretty awesome. So, you know, over in the Middle East, we know that there is, when they try making these peace deals, and I think it's a huge possibility. So I wanted to get in a little bit before I close this out. I had made a statement in the past where I think a peace deal could be made, and this could be grounds for the breaking of the third temple, right? But now I'm not really sure, because I think with the fact that I don't think Hamas is going to relent to a peace deal, and they're going to do things in the background just like they've done a couple of times already. Same thing with the Ukraine Russia war over there. They've both been sat down with Trump and tried to make this peace deal, and one side or the other denies it, and then they start all over again, and that's still going on. Like, where did the Ukraine war go, right? We're not even talking about that anymore. It's all about the Middle East. He's just, Trump is just trying to do what he can to keep us from going into a World War III. But when we have monetary supply and weaponry supply from all these other countries going into the Muslim Brotherhood, you're not gonna root out their core belief, because there's too many of them. You can't kill them all, you know? And I know Netanyahu is adamant about rooting that out so that they don't get attacked ever again, but I'm not sure that that's even possible. But here we go, and we have Christians over here that I think the dividing line in the Christian community is, do you think that the Israeli government is corrupt, like so many are talking about right now? And this is, I've largely ignored the whole issue, but it's kind of funny that if they've bought out our government, then why is Trump telling Netanyahu right now to back off and stop bombing Gaza, right? And he's trying to come up with a solution. He won't let Netanyahu annex Gaza either. So that's interesting. If he's not going to allow Netanyahu, and he's commanding him to do this, it's not like Netanyahu's going to defy what Trump said, like he did with Biden, and just keep going, because ultimately they do want all of their hostages to come home. But I think that Hamas themselves is not. They're going to pretend. Basically, they're going to pretend, and then this is going to start all over again at some point. So I don't know. Trump may be able to close a deal, but I don't know how long it's going to actually be able to hold out, and maybe not even long enough to break ground for a third temple. It's difficult to say how that could even come about at this point, but watching what's going on over there is pretty clear. These other nations are not going to allow peace to go on. So if it's not in Israel, it's shifting to these other Christian countries, and they're just resupplying the Palestinian and Muslim Arabs with weaponry, and they go in and if they're not killing Jews, they're killing Christians. That's what's happening. And so if we're going to save America, Trump needs to be able, and I pray, I think we need to be praying, guys, for these midterms to turn out that we end up with more seats in the House and more seats in the Senate, so that we can bring in rule of law to root out all of this stuff. Because I think we're going to have, they said 2 years off the bat, when he got in there, but now that we see that Texas is going to have several more seats, where we got Louisiana and Missouri, I think, is going to have a couple more. We could end up with several more seats and therefore win over in the midterms and be able to bring forth legislation to put a stop to a lot of this stuff. So keep praying, people. I think our prayers are really working in the Christian circles, and paying attention to this stuff is really important. And let's pray for Sudan and Nigeria, because I know if this kind of thing starts coming over to here, we're going to see who's strong in their faith and who isn't, right? See if we can put a stop to it if it actually comes about. But I think our churches need to start arming up. Anyways, I say all that because this is where we come with the watchman's call to discern, warn, and prepare. Let's draw the red line against this world system, the red line in your life and the red line in your mind. Thank you for joining me today. Share and like it out to everybody. You see, I got my at Redline Live and at Stream Redline on all of these platforms. You can come find me and leave a little bit of comments in the chat for me, huh? I'll get back to you guys if you leave me a comment. I'd love to chat it out with you. We'll see you next time on Redline.